what's checking, everybody? Welcome to the Orangebloods Prediction Show, brought to you by our folks over at PrizePicks. They will 100% match your initial deposit. Use that promo code Orangebloods. And I can tell you, as we're doing today's video, we're all a bunch of happy Orangebloods predictors because PrizePicks gave us a little juice in our account. Look at Alex. We were all feeling very good about it earlier today. Anwar was like, hey, everybody, check your PrizePicks account. Make sure your PrizePicks deposits came in. And when we did, it was as good as Christmas, Alex. It really was. It was like, oh, it's playtime.
Nothing like it, boys. And hey, we'll have some I'm looking through it right now, man. I can't wait to get some NFL picks for some entries this week. The last 3 weeks, man, my 3 correlation plays have all hit. It was what was it? So it was
Jacksonville, right?
The Jacksonville correlation. The second was the Russell Wilson, Cortland Sutton.
Yep.
Last week was a little bit different on Thanksgiving. It was the Josh Allen running it back with Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I think I have my correlation play that I like best this week too, but I'm gonna look for some other ones as well.
We'll give you some entries on PrizePicks to look forward to this weekend. But first, we got to go through our predictions of championship weekend in college football. There are a couple of games expected to be really close, a couple of games expected to be complete butt kickings, and then there's like one in the middle that I'm curious to see how we think it will go. But let's start with the Friday night game, Pac-12 championship. I think it's weird that they play on Friday night. Feels like Utah and USC on a Saturday could stand up to just about anything on the schedule. But alas, it's a Friday night game on where USC is at the moment a 2.5-point favorite. Let's go around the table. Cam Rising, Caleb Williams. What do we think is going to happen in the Pac-12 championship game? Given that Utah won that game earlier this season at Utah, 43-42. It was an incredible game.
Yeah, I do remember I was watching that one catch, and it was an incredible game. If I'm correct, Tetch, that was USC's first loss of the season.
Correct.
If I'm correct, so yeah, so that was that was obviously a backbreaker for them, and as close as that thing was, but. Lincoln Riley is a guy that this is a big game for him. He's a guy that I would bet against. You want a score prediction or you just want a winner?
I don't care. You give me you go as far as you want to.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I'm not gonna. There's certain guys I'm not gonna bet against in a big game. I'm not gonna bet against them. So give me USC 38-34 in the rematch.
All right, Jason. What about you?
USC did lose at Utah. I get it. USC has everything on the table this game. I think they win this game by 2 scores.
Wow. Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going – what's the line in this one right now?
2.5.
USC 2.5.
Well, I mean, the public's all over USC, it looks like. But damn, dude. So 69% of the tickets, 82% of the money as of yesterday on USC. This new app I'm using is not as up to date as the one I use now for NFL that I have the tools for. I just switched the tools over to my own website. So I haven't looked at this college one that's not as premium. But as of yesterday, 69% of public bets, but 82% of the money. So sharp money's on US. I mean, to me, it was just USC was the lock anyway. See that they have some sharp money trends with them. I don't have any time during the season to watch Pac-12 football and their horrible announcers and their bad officiating. So I don't have much to say about it. I just know what I have seen of USC. They look really good. They have a terrific quarterback, great coach, and the sharp money's on USC. So give me USC, and I'll say it's by more than I'll say USC by and they cover.
I don't know if USC is surging, if they're as a team playing their best football, but Caleb Williams is. So I just feel like if the guy that we saw last week against Notre Dame shows up in Las Vegas for the Pac-12 championship game and puts on a Heisman level performance. I don't know that I believe that Cameron Rising a second time this season is going to get the best. You know what this kind of reminds me of, Anwar? The year Sam beat Kyler Murray. And then the second time around, you've got a guy who's about to win the Heisman, who's playing at an even higher level than he was in October. And in the end, Oklahoma was too much for Texas that day. I kind of think we might see the same thing, USC beating Utah. I think USC covers the 2.5. Let's go to the two big blowout games for a second. Is it just because I think we can go through these pretty quickly? LSU, Georgia, the SEC championship. The same LSU team that struggled with A&M last week and losing, really got their ass kicked by A&M. Does anybody think this thing's the spread is 17.5? Does anybody think this thing's staying within 2 touchdowns?
I would say I would take LSU in those points. I think they have a bounce back game. I think last week was a fluke. They got some pride they're going to want to show. 2 touchdowns I'd put it between 10 and 14, but I would certainly probably take LSU plus 17.5. Yeah.
I 100% agree with you, Jason.
Georgia hasn't been like playing lights out necessarily the last several weeks, right?
LSU got humiliated last week. Got to believe that there's just a little better performance.
I'm with you guys, dude. That's too many. I mean, it's too many points, man, for two good football teams in a championship game. Are you kidding me? Give me the more than 2 touchdowns.
Now, if we go to the other game on Championship Saturday, that's just supposed to be a throttling. It's undefeated Michigan. Number 2 Michigan is a 16.5-point favorite over 8-4 Purdue and their star receiver Charlie Jones. I'll go first on this one. I think Michigan crushes Purdue by more than the 16.5.
Yeah.
I don't know anything. Go ahead, Omar.
No, I was going to say, if you just watch that game against Ohio State, I mean, Michigan's a good team. They're a really, really, really freaking good team. So I'm 100% with you. After watching that game last week, that was the good part of Texas playing on that Friday. I got to watch a lot of games on Saturday. Nah, Michigan is a much better team than Purdue.
I don't know anything about Purdue. Hadn't watched a second of Purdue football.
They've got a really good wide receiver.
Yeah, and
they always do. How is that? They always do. True. It's like Rondale Moore and David Bell. Now they got a new guy. It's crazy.
Like on where I watched the Ohio State-Michigan game, and Michigan put it on them in the second half and fourth quarter. Ohio State pretty much gave up, it looked like. So I'm going to go the other direction. I'm going to take the points with Purdue just because I tend to think after a team plays out of their minds like Michigan did, they're going to have not necessarily a letdown, but they're going to come back to reality a little bit. So total win on my part. I don't know a damn thing about Purdue other than what you guys just told me, really. So I'll take Purdue plus the points, but that's just kind of me going against the grain a little bit.
Kind of a backdoor home game for Purdue. The game's at Lucas Oil Stadium, so it's in Indiana, which, I don't know if
Michigan will still have 90% of the fans there.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Like, even though it's literally down the street from Purdue,
it's still close enough to Michigan. Yeah, it's still close.
Michigan still might have 60,000 in the stadium. This is an interesting game for me. ACC Championship. Clemson and North Carolina. The game is in Charlotte. Clemson is a 7.5 favorite. North Carolina, a little like LSU last weekend, loses a rivalry game that they probably shouldn't have. I wonder if that means and Clemson's been playing better football, yet I think this is going to be one of those fourth quarter games that's decided in the last couple of minutes. I'm expecting a close game. I might take North Carolina in the points if you force me to.
Not sold on Clemson, not sold on DJ Ugalegi, and Carolina's on a 2-game losing streak, but I'm taking Carolina plus the points. I'm just not sold on DJ in a big game, and he's just too inconsistent for me, man. Give me North Carolina in the points.
Anybody else? Onward, you're giving me that I don't really care about either two teams, so I'm just not going to say nothing.
I don't. Neither team has wowed me when I watched them this year. So, kind of to your point, it's the quarterback hasn't. The play has been, somewhat average to me for Clemson. I think they're a good team. I probably lean towards more to North Carolina, but Clemson. I'll give Clemson a nod. Only just because big game, kind of been there, done that in many aspects. So I'll go with Clemson as far as this game is concerned.
Alex, you can just pass if you want to.
I'll pass.
Fair enough.
I have nothing that's going to give any valuable insight about this game.
We'll skip the Central Florida Tulane game.
Okay, that's good.
Sorry, I just wanted to make myself laugh there for a second. And we'll go to the first game of the day on Saturday. The only game on Saturday morning, Big 12 Championship, Jerry World, Kansas State and TCU. TCU with everything on the line.
Yeah, it's TCU, man. Just give me the team. I mean, I've seen both these teams up close. I've seen like we've talked about, there are pieces on K-State that I think are just so good, right? I think that on offense, Deuce Vaughn is. I mean, like on Prize, I'd like to see what his more or less is over on PrizePicks, because you could have
get to it. Don't worry.
Okay, but so him. They got King Felix. They got all these dudes, but I just think, after watching so closely TCU and Kansas State both versus Texas, I've just come away more impressed with TCU as an overall roster, as an overall program, everything that they're doing. So I think the TCU is the better football team. I think they're the better coach team. I think they have the better quarterback. I think they have better receivers. For me, it's TCU. I think that, to me, it's TCU kind of running away. I'm not sure what the spread is, but I would pick them to win by at least a touchdown.
2.5 is all, Alex. TCU minus 2.5.
I think you should take TCU. I think you should take TCU minus 2.5.
I'm kind of leaning Kansas State.
Really? What is it about it? Is it just you think that their offense can just keep up? You think
when these two teams played earlier this season at TCU, Kansas State jumped out to a 28-10 lead. And then TCU did that mad scramble thing that it's done a few times this season, where obviously they ended up winning the game 38-28. So TCU went on a run of 28-0 to end the game. But there was a moment where Kansas State was playing really, really well in this game. There's something about Will Howard playing quarterback for Kansas State right now.
He played in that game too.
He did. Mm-hmm. And there's just, they played a bad second half. I don't know if I think they're going to win this game, Alex, but I think it feels like every championship Saturday, there's got to be one team with their foot in the door into the playoff that goes through one crazy kind of a scare. And this TCU team's been walking a high wire. They really didn't play well against Texas. They probably should have lost to Baylor. They had wasn't Oklahoma State up big on TCU, and then TCU came back. They flirted with fire a few times. And there's just a part of me that wonders when midnight is going to strike for Max Duggan in a big game. Maybe it's not Saturday. I'm just saying I think Kansas State's going to score some. I think this thing's going to turn into a shootout. And I think it'll be the kind of game I thought Texas and TCU was going to be, and then neither offense got off the ground. But as we move over to the prize picks, I think I like me some Kansas State. They've got Will Howard with an 18.5 fantasy score. I feel like he's going to hit that and go over and hit the more. They've got Deuce Vaughn with 21.5 fantasy points.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's your play.
Right? I told you, and I think they've got Malik Nollis at 13.5 fantasy points. I feel like that's another one that I kind of like to hit the more. I definitely like Deuce and Malik Nollis. Like, they get him the ball, and I think he could hit 13.5 without having to score a touchdown. And I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. The TCU numbers, I'm not so sure about. They've got Duggan at 20.5, which I think, again, might hit the more on that. I don't know. He's not my favorite fantasy score at all. Kendra Miller, 19.5.
I've been burned. I feel like I've been burned by Kendre a couple times, man.
Well, he got banged up, and he hasn't had the
Is he healthy? Is he healthy right now?
There it is. I don't know.
Yeah.
He hasn't been. They have not used him in the last couple of weeks like they were previous to that. What do we think about Caleb Williams and a 31.5 fantasy score?
Well, he threw for, I think, 5 touchdowns last time these two teams played, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, that's a lot. But you know what? I'm looking. He's gone over at his last 5 games. So that's
incredible.
Really number for him. Yeah.
It's
that's
a huge
crazy.
number.
Last 5 catch have been 37.8, 40.2, 33.3, 35.1, 34.8.
Like I said, man, he's playing great football right now.
Yeah.
I think one of the sneaky USC-Utah games to keep an eye on, Mario Williams with a 10.5 fantasy score. He just started to really get back into the flow of the offense last week. Started to get used a little bit more after coming back from injury. I think I like that 10.5 more than I like Jordan Addison's 19.5. That's a high number for a guy who's been so hot and cold for much of the season.
Yeah, boy, you're right. I'm looking at Addison. Wow, talk about swings. His last 5, these are fantasy scores. 6, then 26.3, then 1.2, and I know he's had some injury stuff too. But then 34.8, and then 8.8. You talk about a roller coaster ride.
Wow.
I would not touch
Jeez.
Jordan Addison.
I'll give you a number. I'll give you an entry I like. They've got Drake May with 340.5 combined passing and rushing yards. I think I like the less on that. I think Clemson in a championship game isn't going to let that dude just go off on them. Just my opinion. Clemson's been playing better football. 340.5 is a pretty big number. I know he's really good, but Jason, how about the Caleb Williams 2.5 touchdown passes?
Well, again, I need to double check and confirm, but I think he threw 5 in the last time. I think that's going to be I think USC is going to put up some points. So I'd probably go more on that. I mean, that seems like you can do that in his sleep a lot of times. And I know Utah's a pretty good team with, I think they have a pretty good defense. But, yeah, that was a high-scoring game last time they played too. So I'd probably go more on that.
They haven't put the rushing receiving yards up for Deuce Vaughn yet, but keep a close eye on that and then jump on the more. Every time I played Deuce Vaughn in the more this season, he's paid off. Here, I'm just going to go with a couple. I mentioned the Caleb Williams. You've got UTSA playing North Texas on Friday. 2.5 touchdown passes for Frank. Kind of think in a championship game setting, he might be a good more play. I always love the mores.
My only concern with that would be if they get
because you don't have to root against a guy.
Yeah, that's true. UTSA is favored by 8.5, so not a ton. So it's a game that should be on paper should play fairly close right into the fourth quarter. Your concern on something like that is if they get up by 17, 20 points in the second half, are they going to take the air out of the ball? But they seem to think this game might be fairly close, so that might be a pretty good play.
If you're looking for another Big 12 championship game, I mentioned Malik Nollis and his fantasy score that I liked. They have him listed at 63.5 yards. And it feels like either way this game plays. So if Kansas State wins this game, it's because I think offensively they played great and he would be at the center of that. But if TCU plays great, KSU will have to pass to stay or in the game or catch up in the game. And I think it still could lead to a lot of targets, potentially cheap yards, one way or the other. I think that dude's going to have a game. I like Malik Nawlis as one of my favorite plays this week from what I'm looking at.
You talked about like your favorite plays. You talked about Frank Harris. That 1 week that I did gonna hit that thou, I had Frank Harris against North Texas. They had him down for 31.5 rushing yards, and he finished with 75. I think right now, what do they have Frank Harris from a rushing yard perspective? I think it's 40.
40.5.
Right now, if I'm correct. 0.5. He finished this game against team. So that's another one that would be a really good play.
Speaking of quarterback rushing yards, Caleb Williams at 30.5 is an interesting one. He's been running a lot lately, running all over people. He did against Notre Dame at least. And again, I think that Utah game is going to be a just wild affair.
Against Notre Dame catch 35, so he wasn't over that number by much. UCLA 30.
It's because they include the sacks.
Well, yeah.
So he probably had like close to 100 net or close to 100 gross, and then had a bunch of losses to that. There were times, you know what it was? He was running backwards so much that his 10-yard gains looked like 50-yard gains. All right. Well, fellas, for myself, Alex, Anwar, Jason, this has been your Orangebloods prediction video brought to you by PrizePicks. As you can tell,
we got to get the NFL picks in, man.
That's right. I'm sorry, Alex.
We got to do it. All right. So
hold on. Let me hit the record button or something on this.
No, we're good. We're good.
Here we go. All right. So I don't know.
Get our pen out.
I don't know which one my favorite one is, but there are a couple that are just standalone that aren't. Mainly the standalone one that's just too low is Garrett Wilson, more or less of 60.5 receiving yards. He projects for about 25 more receiving yards than that. That's that they're going to change that thing. So that could be changed by the time you watch it, but that's too low. It's 60.5.
I see it with 30.5 for Garrett Wilson.
Receiving yards?
No, receiving yards.
You better click on it. Let's see. Let me just look at it here. Let me look at it.
You're not first half catch.
Oh, you're right. It is first half.
Okay, yeah. So
my bad.
5, and then the stuff with this one is just a little bit of a fun one, but both these guys seem too low for the AJ Brown revenge. AJ Brown versus Treylon Burks in this game, the player that got traded away for the player that's going. Treylon Burks is going a little bit ham now that they're working him in for the Titans. 34.5 was the over-under for his receiving yards. That feels way too low. And then for A.J. Brown, 15 for a guy going up against the number 3 matchup in all of fantasy for outside wide receivers. 15 fantasy points in PPR. Are you kidding me? He's going to go over that. So the Treylon Burks, A.J. Brown revenge narrative, right? That'll be a correlation. The one I think I like the most is this one. We always target the Texans, right? We always target the Texans with the run game. They have Nick Chubb at more or less than 90.5 rushing yards. If you look at basically anybody that's gotten over 17 rushes for any team versus Houston, I believe only Antonio Gibson last week. He had 17 rushes. I think he only got 72 yards. Everybody else has gotten any volume, has gone way over 90.5 against the. Derrick Henry impregnated like 3 members of that defense. But Saquon had a huge game. Anybody that's been really good, like anybody that's good and gets volume goes ham against these guys. So Nick Chubb over, and bring it back on the other side with Nico Collins, who has 10 as far as a fantasy score. I mean, here's a guy that got 9 targets last week after the quarterback change, playing all the snaps and getting basically double the work that Brandon Cooks is. You're getting him for the same price as Brandon Cooks, and for the last 4 weeks, he's been a much better player. So Nick Chubb with Nico Collins is my official correlation play that will count. But one other one that I wanted to talk about also was And this is kind of like a mix of two that we've done before, because we always like to get into these Detroit games, these back and forth matches. Trevor Lawrence has an over-under of 7, or a more or less of 17.5 as far as his fantasy score. He'll go over that, and I'll pair him up with Zay Jones that just went bananas last week. As we talk about, this is the Sonic the Hedgehog rainbow strip. Like this is the Mario Kart magic mushroom. This is the setup and the spot and the field that gets other teams going big, right? And so we keep the connection going with Trevor Lawrence to Zay Jones. Zay Jones, I mean, he almost got to 10 fantasy points last week on receptions alone. He's going to get it versus Detroit. And then on the other side, bring it back, this will be a three-way one. Get him on Ross St. Brown in there. His over-under is sitting, or his more or less, what was his yardage? It's like whatever it was, it projects at. So 74.5 receiving yards. Take the more on that. I'm seeing him in our projection system is like 104. I mean, we have projection systems way off of that. So those are the ones that I'm looking at most. The Garrett Wilson, just the standalone one. The Treylon Burks, AJ Brown, Moores for Burks on the 34.5 receiving yards, AJ Brown on the 15 fantasy points. The main one that I like most, Nick Chubb Moore on the rushing yards, correlated with Nico Collins on coming back on the fantasy score more. And then the three-way play with the Moores on Trevor Lawrence fantasy score, Zay Jones fantasy score, and Amon-Ra St. Brown receiving yards.
Well,
use all my money up on those. Use all my money up on all those entries.
There you go. Go make some cash.
So you like the fantasy score on the Trevor Lawrence, Zay Jones?
Mm-hmm. I like those two fantasy scores.
Okay. Well, on that note, everybody, I feel like Alex just gave us the goodness. So everybody, I hope you took notes. I hope we had some. It really won't matter. Like, who cares if we got the predictions right on the conference championship games?
Yeah.
Nobody's really keeping score, but that's what we think is going to happen. For us over at Orangebloods.com, get over to PrizePicks, get your entries in. I feel like we've set the table for you. Until next week, you guys have a great to nothing but success on PrizePicks. Later.